afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. And to start off, if you would all make sure your phones are on silent so there are no interruptions during the lecture. And I'm Ian Carpenter, by the way, and it's my privilege to extend the welcome to you all for coming today. And to kick this thing off, we would like to start with reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would all stand and join me in reciting the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Welcome to our second annual Legacy Lecture. Today I'm pleased to be able to announce that our guest speaker is Mr. Nick Benjamin. I'd like to recognize, if you look towards the back of your auditorium here, you can notice that we have a lot of blue and gold in the back. Mr. Benjamin here graduated from W.S. Neal High School, and it's good to see some blue and gold here on campus today. So we appreciate W.S. Neal Middle and High joining us today. Mr. Nicholas Benjamin is from East Brewton, Alabama, where he attended W.S. Neal High School, class of 2003. While at Neal, Nick was a four-sport athlete, bringing home 2 state championships in track and field, in addition to a number of other sports, including the quarterback of the W.S. Neal football team. After graduating 5th in his class, Nick accepted a scholarship to attend Southern University and A&M College in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Athletically, he was a 2-time Southwestern Athletic Conference Western Conference champion, a SWAC Conference champion, and a Black College national champion. Academically, Nick was an honors college graduate, graduated at the top of his engineering class, and was named a 3-time SWAC Academic All-American. He is a LS Lamp Scholar, General Motors Scholarship recipient, and a member of the Pi Tau Sigma Honors Mechanical Engineering Fraternity. Along with his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from the Southern University Honors College, he also holds a master's degree in project and program management with a concentration in engineering from the Florida Institute of Technology. Mr. Benjamin is also a proud member of the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. In his 17-year career at NASA, Mr. Benjamin has worked closely with astronauts, scientists, and engineers to execute science on board the International Space Station. Mr. Benjamin has completed numerous certifications while in the Human Exploration Development and Operations Office, which include Operations Controller, Payload Communications Manager, Timeline Change Officer, Payload Planning Manager, and Operations Systems Manager. He currently serves as a Payload Operations Director, where he manages and directs the 24/7 science operations aboard the International Space Station. In his position, Mr. Benjamin serves as the single point of authority to the Space Flight Director at Johnson Space Flight Center. Mr. Benjamin was also selected for a year-long detail with the executive management team at Marshall Space Flight Center in 2019. He also is a 2012 graduate of the agency's NASA First program, which is the agency's succession management strategy designed to provide employees in science, engineering, and professional administrative positions with the foundational skills necessary for their future success within the agency. NASA First is a result of a One NASA initiative to develop NASA's next generation of leaders so that they have a shared understanding and exposure to NASA's vision and mission. Mr. Benjamin also continues to spread NASA's mission through recruiting efforts throughout the country, as well as being a part of the NASA Engages, a team of select members of the NASA community that engages with the public. Outside of everyday work, he loves to write and produce music, working with local artists in the Huntsville area as well as international artists. He is also part owner of the Huntsville Rockets minor league football organization. He uses any possible opportunity to take part in numerous podcasts, lecture series, and other platforms to mentor today's youth and young professionals. Mr. Benjamin looks for every moment to make an impact on the world around him. Growing up as a kid of a minister, he's always been grounded in faith and looks for the best outcome of any situation. Please join us and the Coastal Alabama Historical Society in welcoming our distinguished guest and speaker for our second annual Legacy Lecture, Mr. Nick Benjamin.
What about now? All right, so I'm probably gonna be walking around and moving, so let's do this right now. All right, everybody hear me? Yep. Okay. So, somebody said that it couldn't be done, but he with a chuckle replied that maybe it couldn't, but he would be one who wouldn't say so till he tried. So he buckled right in with a bit of a grin on his face. If he worried, he hit it. He started to sing as he tackled the thing that couldn't be done, and he did it. Someone once said, "Oh, you never do that," or at least no one ever has done it. But he took off his coat and took off his hat, and before you knew, he'd begun it. With a bit of a grin and a lift of his chin, he just took off his coat and went to it. He started singing as he tackled the thing that couldn't be done, and he did it. There are thousands that say that it cannot be done. There are thousands to prophesy failure. There are thousands to point out to you one by one the dangers that wait to assail you. But just buckle right in with a bit of a grin, just take off your coat and go to it. Just start to sing as you tackle the thing that cannot be done, and you'll do it. Welcome. All right? That's one of those things that I live by. It's posted in my office. There are a lot of things that you go through on a daily basis that you have to refer back to. That welcome, that introduction. I might as well sit down now. But thanks, Brett. First of all, thanks to God for allowing me to come back home and have this opportunity to talk to you guys today. Thanks to the Coastal Alabama Historical Society for inviting me. This is a very, very humbling experience for me. Always coming back home and talking to the hometown, as I call it, makes me very proud. While in Huntsville and all my travels, I'm going to take some blue and gold with me. W.S. Neal is going to be with me somewhere. Some Brewton, Alabama is going to be somewhere. And everybody's going to know I'm from this small town in South Alabama with red dirt. Because that's what made me. Okay? We'll talk a little bit today about a couple of things. We'll try to get through it. I also want to just recognize my family and my friends that are here. I'm at that foundation, that support system that I talked about. One thing that I take with me, when you talk about Brewton, Alabama, when you talk about the community, when you talk about the family environment, one thing that has molded me in my travels and being in leadership is having a strong support system, a strong foundation, right? There are a lot of things that a strong support system can do for you as you go into leadership. Being able to have someone believe in you, being able to tell somebody that, hey, I had somebody to tell me that I could do it. I was enough. And that goes leaps and bounds above any lesson. The fact that I could call my parents in the wee hours of the morning, I still can to the day. I still do. If I need to vent about something that's going on at work, they just sit there and listen. And they always tell me, son, hey, it'll be okay. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep your head clean. Sometimes it's always not easy. However, the strong support system and what I got here in Brewton, Alabama, a small town, to where everybody knows everybody. What's the Cheers theme song? Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. And they're always glad you came, right? So every time I come across that town line, city line, to come in Brewton city limits, it means a lot to me. So thank you guys for having me here. So we're going to talk about a couple of things today. We're going to look at my career, the journey that I've taken in my 17 years at NASA. That career has not always been what everybody looks at. Oh, NASA, space. It's not always been easy, and it's still not easy. So we'll talk about a little of that today and talk about how leadership has formed that, and I'll try to inspire some of you guys to one day maybe to come and work for NASA. It's like plug there. All right, so some of my leadership goals and the things that I look at is the art of perfect practice. Everybody talks about pre-practice prevents poor performance. I hear that all the time. But it's not just a practice. You can practice the wrong thing 1,000,000 times and still fail. Why? Because you practice the wrong thing. Perfect practice is what gets you to the point to where you want to be. Right? I remember coming up and playing ball, a lot of different sports, and running up and down the road. Like I said, my parents are right there. They can attest to it. If there's anything that I didn't want to do is mess up on something that I could have prevented. Why? Because that's all in my court. If I was studying for a test, I wanted to make sure that I knew all of the formulas that needed to go into what I needed to solve. Why? Because that's something I can control. If I can practice perfectly, then I put myself in a better position to succeed. All right? So, leadership kind of depends on a couple things, though. I know we have some leaders in the room, and leadership is a term that I look at now a lot differently. Because in my role as a payload ops director, I lead a team of flight controllers at a room that flies on 24/7, 365. Actually, I was there yesterday. We actually brought in the SpaceX 32 cargo mission to the space station. I left there and headed straight to Brewton, Alabama. However, that team that I lead, we are a part of a bigger flight control team from another team in Houston, another team in Russia, another team in Japan, and another team in Europe. Even in my flight control team room, all of those people sitting in that room that report to me are leaders in their own right. They are their subject matter experts. So me as a director, I'm depending on their expertise to give me the answers that I need to go to the flight director in Houston. Right? Now, I'm the one that's going to fall on the head of the arrow if we give them the wrong answer. So I have to make sure that my team knows what's going on. And I have to have that kind of belief in them to know that they're going to give me the right answer. But if you look at ministers, coaches, leadership takes a lot of different roles. If you lead your family, it takes a lot of different roles, but it depends on a lot of different things. Who are you leading? How developed are they? What level of development are they in? We take a class called Situational Leadership. I think it's by Richard Blanchard. And it talks about how your leadership style goes with who you're leading. First, you have to diagnose who that person is that you're leading. If you have an entry-level person, I can't just delegate to them what to do because they have no clue of what to do. Sort of like an infant child. You have to give them all of the tools necessary to succeed. Whereas high school teenagers, when we think we're grown, you can say, hey, go out, move the car, and come back and bring me the keys. So just kind of think about the differences of what we're talking about. That's how we'll go. We'll talk about the career. I'll touch, on leadership lessons that I've learned over the time, and at the end, we'll leave some time for Q&A. All questions are welcome. All right, so don't be shy. So, introduction and background. We've talked a lot about that, and I really wanted to touch on, early on, the art of competition. As I've coached Little League football in Huntsville, Alabama since I've been there, I've coached high school, I've led teams with NASA. It's all on how you are able to develop your people, okay? And that art of competition is something that I feel like we're lacking. Why? Because if you look at it, the clothes that you have on your back right now, the car that you drive, the food that you eat, everything is dealt with some type of competition. And the people that are able to compete, the people that are able to tell their story the best way are the ones who succeed. There's a reason that you drive by those not purple arcs, but those yellow arcs at McDonald's, and you immediately ease onto the right and go into the drive-thru. It's a reason when we don't have one here, but when that hot sign is on that Krispy Kreme, you ease onto the right. It's not the only donut made in America, right? McDonald's is not the only, or I would say even the best burger that's made in America. But we choose to do that because of a lot of different things. Their marketing strategy, their leadership, right? So, some other things, how those things shaped me and how I am today. One thing that I hated to do as a kid was lose. I hated it. Even when I started school, my kindergarten teacher was right there, and it's amazing to see her here. I would try to finish my work so fast just to beat everybody. I would do all my math problems fast just to beat everybody. And I would come home, and I would get it wrong. Now I'm upset because I got it wrong, or I didn't do my work good enough. And my parents mad because I didn't do my best, but I'm Russian. I won. However, that's a good thing and a bad thing, right? Because going up in high school, I never felt like I was the smartest kid in class. Never, right? But I made sure that I did what I could control to make sure that I ranked at the top. Ranked at the top in high school, ranked at the top in college. Even when it goes back to that poem, it said it couldn't be done. Okay? But it all rolls back to that leadership and that strong foundation as well. I will say that I had the biggest rooting section from Brewton, Alabama, going through trials and tribulations. So as we sit here, take that little nugget and make sure that you are influencing, you're uplifting the people in your area. What's the saying? It costs nothing to be nice, huh, Dad? Right. Anybody remember the Underdog cartoon? I see. Funny story. I was in the grocery store the other day, and a young kid walked by, and I don't think I'm that old. Just turned 40 in January. A little kid walked by, he said, oh, excuse me, It's okay. I got you. So I saw a lot of the older folks, and I consider myself old as well, so don't take that offense, talk about the Underdog Underdog cartoon. Underdog was a smaller dog, a wimpy looking dog, but he had his cape on, he had his Superman suit on. And everything that he was up against, he succeeded. Nobody could figure out why, nobody knew why they called the underdog, why wouldn't you call whoever, whatever superhero. But I took that along with me for a long time, because we'll get into this story a little later. But when I started my career at Southern University, I was coming out, and I was on my head to go play football at the University of Alabama. I started quarterback since 10th grade. My grades were good. I was a little undersized, but the underdog, right? 2003 is when Coach Dennis Franchione got, whatever, if you're an Alabama fan, you know. Everything went to wherever in the handbasket. And I made a call back, and my name was no longer on the list. I was no longer in that recruiting pool for the University of Alabama. I don't apply to one school. That was the University of Alabama. Okay? I've been recruited by a lot of schools, but I only wanted to go one place. So now what? 1 week in football, I'm the Scholar Athlete of the Week. I had gotten a letter from Harvard. I got a letter from Princeton, Penn, Yale. I didn't want to go to none of those places. I wanted to go be part of the Crimson Tide. Knowing what I know now, right, that decision may be a little different. However, everything happens for a reason. Middle Tennessee had come to recruit me, and I just forgot about it, right? My dad made a phone call. The coach at Middle Tennessee was from Coach Cliff Lewis from Brewton, Alabama. He came down, we talked to him. He said, yeah, you know, we can have that conversation. Coach Lewis was no longer coaching at Middle Tennessee State. He was now coaching at Southern University. So I made the decision. I guess Southern's where I'm going. I was pre-med in high school. Southern had a nursing program, didn't have pre-med, so it wasn't going to happen. Me and my dad sat in the office of the advisor, and so what do you want to do? I said, math works. I think math just works. Because at this point, I have no clue. So all you guys, I'm assuming college students, I had no clue. So when everybody sees 17-year career at NASA, I had no clue. And I know, you know, your advisors, your teachers are on your head right now to figure out what it is that you want to do. You want to have an aim, a goal. You want to be able to have a focus. However, it is okay if you don't know. Just make sure that you're taking the right strides to be successful in many areas, right? So me and my dad were sitting in the advisor's office, and he said, well, you want to play football? I said, yes, that's the plan. I plan to play football. He said, what's your major? It's engineering. They laughed. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I didn't know what to think. I'm a kid. I get it. I said, well, tell you what, I'm going to play football and I'm going to graduate in engineering. 5 years later, when I walked across the stage as a 5-year letter with the football team and an honors mechanical engineering degree, I went to that same advisor and I said, thank you. The motivation to someone saying that it can't be done. Because if you ask my parents, that's one thing that you cannot tell me, is to tell me that I can't do something. I found my mom's skates in the garage one time. And she said, son, don't go put those skates on. You're gonna bust your head open. We had a concrete driveway. You're gonna bust your head open if you put those skates on. Next thing she knew, I was coming down the side of the driveway full speed into the grass like a daredevil. Somebody told me it couldn't be done, right? So, my journey to NASA, like I said, my senior year, I'm a General Motors scholar. My plan is to go to Detroit and to build motors. I have an infatuation with cars. I love cars. I love muscle cars. I love the way they're built. I love the way everything is about them. I had a guy from Andalusia, Alabama, that went to Southern University, that came and got me out of class the day we had our career fair. I didn't go to the career fair because I didn't have a haircut. Just being honest. My dad always told me to represent yourself well. I didn't have a haircut, so I didn't go. He came and got me out of class. He said, hey, I saw your name at the top of the list. Why didn't I see you at the career fair? I said, well, I got my job kind of lined up. I think I'm fine. So I think you should take a look at this job in Huntsville for NASA. You ever thought about working for NASA? I said, NASA? NASA's in Alabama? Yes. I said, okay, I'll try it out. Same weekend came by, I was still chasing football, thinking I was about to be this great football star. I was pretty decent, don't get it wrong. I was pretty good. But the same weekend I had a tryout for the CFL somewhere in Mississippi. And I told my dad, I said, Dad, I don't know. I think I might go to this trial. I think this is the one. I think they're gonna pick me this time. My dad said, son, you've had enough. Go to the job interview and see what they're talking about. Best decision I ever made in my life. Best decision I ever made in my life. And if you can tell, I keep going back to that foundation. My dad could have easily said, well, you're right, son. He could have been what we call yes men and just say, okay, yes, son, go do whatever you want to do. Follow your dreams, which is not a bad thing. He's always told me to do whatever I wanted to do and be the best at it. However, parents, influencers, people that are in your life to influence your decisions are there to help you make the right decision, not always your decision. So remember that. When somebody comes in and they give you the word or the news that you may not want to hear, ask them to just explain a little bit about why you're telling me to make this decision. Or tell me why not. It's just not a no, right? So, like I said, I get to NASA. I have an interview. I'm hired on as an operations controller. I have no clue still what an operations controller is. I have no clue about space station. I didn't grow up learning about space. I didn't grow up learning about NASA. I knew one thing though, that if you tell me that I can't learn it, now you're in trouble. Because I put myself in a situation to where my engineering degree, I've taught myself to problem solve. If I can problem solve, I can do the job. Most of the things in the job force, they want to know if you can think and are you teachable. If you're teachable and you can think, I can almost let you do any job that you want to be, right? However, some of those things that we talk about, I had to learn the hard way. I'm a Southern man to the core. There's a lot of things that we are stubborn about. Everybody knows it. You can't tell us certain things. However, a lot of the self-assessments that I took growing up in my career at NASA, the Myers-Briggs, the DISC assessment, that teaches you things about yourself. How do you learn? How do you teach? How do you lead? How do you lead others? Situational awareness. That is the biggest things, some of the biggest things that I had to learn in my growth. So, we talked about teamwork, adaptability. We talked about resilience. Because when I was hired on, that was the first fresh out of college hire that they had in 15 years. Why? Because of the expertise that's needed to do some of those jobs and those functions. They get people that have been in the wheel for a while. Everybody says you don't reinvent the wheel. Well, in the government and NASA, we don't do that a lot. We do a lot of things based off lessons learned. Right? I know some of y'all have heard that term before, lessons learned. But lessons learned is something that you've gone through, the lessons that you can take, you pass that on to the next person that's going to be doing a similar or certain project. Why do you do that? Because some things were a success. Some things could have been a failure as well. So the things that you want to do is make sure that you're building that bridge between those two projects so the next one can be that much more successful. So leadership in the space environment. Said we talk about my career a little bit. Brett did an amazing job kind of putting out what that looked like. If you look at all these patches here, these are the different positions that I've held since I've been at NASA. Operations control and PACOM. Operations control is like the safety man, the safety person that makes sure that everything safety related is done with the crew on space station. The PACOM, the Payloads Communication Manager, that is the person that is the voice from space to the ground. So whenever the crew calls from the International Space Station, they'll call down. That PACOM or the Payload Ops Director is the one that talks to them. Nobody else in the room has had the qualifications or had the training to speak on that loop. Now, I didn't know what this meant at first. I sat down in the chair. I was making a presentation at one of our branch meetings, and my branch chief said, "Hey, you got a radio voice." I said, what is that? "I think you should be a PACOM." I said, "Okay, let's do it." I didn't know everybody in the world would be listening. Space-to-ground loops are the only loops that are recorded continuously. They are broadcasted around the world, and at any time they can be taken to put on any kind of publications. So you would think, I would know that sometimes I may watch a YouTube video and you see a call go up from the crew, and it's me. But they don't let you know that. So when you're talking to them, at the first couple ones, I just, hey, you know, we're people, right? But to hear yourself on a YouTube video that's had millions of views, you're like, well, I could have said that a little different, right? So we go from there to a timeline change officer. If you look at the timeline for the astronauts on station, it is very, very specifically measured in time. 5-minute increments. They have to work out twice a day. We tell them when to eat, we tell them when to sleep, we tell them all their science experiments, but there is a team, the TCO and the PPMs, that plan that out, along with our commercial customers around the world. We talked about those different 5 centers or flight control teams around the world. One here in Huntsville, Houston, which is JSC, Russia, which is at Roscosmos, JAXA, Japan, and ESA, the Europeans. We have to get together and plan 6-month increments for each crew member. I think we have a total of 7 crew members up there right now, 4 Americans and 3 Russians. So how does that happen? Just as in yesterday, the minute that we captured the SpaceX 32 capsule, we had timing constraints on things that we had to get off of the capsule to get it plugged up, get it powered before that science is no longer usable. Clockwork, schedule. That has to be specifically timed out by this team. You go from there to operations support manager, which was basically the second in command to the payload ops director. And they do a lot of the change requests that come through, and now down to payload ops director, which is what I am now. That is the single point of authority, as Brett stated, to the flight director down at JSC. So anything that goes through payload-wise, scientist-wise, they have to get that go from us, and we have planned that out accordingly. So what does my mission support look like? In 17 years, I supported the last 11 shuttle flights. And I know I had a funny story. I was in the mall one day after we retired the shuttles, and I had a NASA shirt on, and the guy says, "You don't have a job anymore, do you?" I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, y'all retired the shuttles. What you gonna do now?" I said, "Well, NASA's a lot bigger than the space shuttles. Do you know where they were going?" He said, "Well, no, I didn't know where they're going. I just saw them leave ground and come back. So what were they doing?" I said, well, I work space station. After we retired the shuttles, we started to use the Russian soil-using progress vehicles to take up supply and resupply missions. Right? I know you've seen here in the news, SpaceX has now started to take our passengers up, our astronauts up, but before then they did cargo missions. I supported 32 SpaceX cargo missions, 12 SpaceX crew missions, 31 progress missions, 56 Soyuz missions, 10 orbital missions, and I've worked with over 223 crew members. Now, I was talking to my dad last night when I got in. A lot of the things that we do are not publicized, or the science that we conduct is not publicized because of why? NASA's a federal agency. So we use the tax dollars for our budget. So with that, the advertisement type of thing is no more. Now, if you were closer to Huntsville, you'd have NASA TV. You could click on it, you can see whatever we do. In Brewton, Alabama, we didn't have NASA TV in 2003, so I knew nothing about what was going on with the space station. Okay? However, there are resources. Everybody's got a smartphone. I know I check every pocket in it, I guarantee you, smartphones everywhere. Technology is at the touch of at the bottom of your hands, touch of your hands. So anything you want to search now and look for is out there. But this is what my career has looked like and what I've supported as a flight controller with the International Space Station. So we talked about the current role. As a pod, this is not the only role that we do. When I'm not on console, I'm leading projects, I'm supporting meetings, I'm leading boards. Right now, I am the chair of the Flight Rule Control Board, and that is where anything of our documentation that has to be changed, you know, with us, it's not an easy task. We have to change it. We have to go and get it approved at this board. Then we have to take it to another board, get it approved. Then it has to be published. All of those systems are put in place for a reason, right? Also, I know Brett talked about the Speakers Bureau, which is now NASA Engages, is what I approved to come here. NASA First, we talked about the Center Director Detail. I was also chair of the Black Employees and Allies of Marshall Space Flight Center, which was before we had to stop doing what we were doing. We were the largest employee resource group and the fastest growing employee resource group in the agency. So I was proud of that. And the thing about that is this, that leadership part in that taught me a lot. Why? Because even though you have to find another way to get the job done, there's still ways to get the job done. The older folks might say there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? So we still have to support the mission, execute the mission. We just have to find a way to get it done. So you think, what are operations on board ISS? What does it look like? Anybody in here ever heard of ISS? I'm pretty sure. Show of hands. All right. So you kind of know what I'm talking about. But the ISS serves as a unique laboratory for science research, helping us understand how humans can live and work in space. It orbits the Earth 16 times in a day and travels about 17,500 miles per hour. So that's faster than any probably projectile bullet that you can shoot from any gun here on Earth. So when I'm sitting console, I might be able to experience 16 sunsets and sunrises in a day's time. It's one of the beautiful things about sitting there and being in awe of what our creation looks like from that far. It is built by international partnership and 5 space agencies from 15 different countries. So we talked about the 5 space agencies that we all work with. However, there are 15 countries that are involved within those 5 agencies. So when we talk about NASA, when we talk about space, when you talk about space station, when you talk about the Artemis program, the different things that we have going on, all of that is involved in this bigger scheme of what are we doing next, okay? And what are we doing next is going to be depending on a lot of folks sitting right here in this front row, a lot of folks that's sitting right there in that back row, okay? You have to understand that engineers aren't the only people that work for NASA. We have a legal team. We have teachers. We have business professionals. All of those areas can get in somewhere, and if you want to support the mission at NASA, you can do so. Science coming from ISS. This is a short video here that we'll just go through and play because I know we're kind of pinched for time of what we do. This is a older publication from 2022 that we started to try to make sure that we were telling folks what we were doing. The habits for humanity, how are we helping humanity, seeing our home in a new light. A lot of the telemetry that you get, that you see on some of the news channels with the weather, they use some of our telemetry and photography that we get from space station to do that. Another funny story while you guys are watching this, right? So we have a repository on space station to where we are able to recycle sweat and other bodily fluids into drinkable water. Why do we need that? Because when you're on a 9-month mission to go anywhere outside of low Earth orbit, there's not a Chevron that you can stop at and grab a bottle of water. Right? We have to find other ways to be efficient in space travel. We are growing plants. We are figuring out how long-term duration space flight affects the body. That's why people are spending more time. And all of that comes down to us making longer missions. The thing is to make space safe to live. Right? So I went to JSC and we were in training, and they pull out this bottle. And it's almost clear water, right? And asked if we wanted to try it. Me? I said, no, sir. I'm fine. I stepped back. However, the astronauts that we have on station, every time they work out or use the laboratory, this is recycled into a system. Now, how does that help us here on Earth? There are a lot of places, a lot of countries that don't have drinkable water. So if we can devise this system, or have this system to where we can recycle either dirty water or bodily fluids. Doesn't sound right because we live in a perfect world where you can just go turn the faucet and get whatever water you want. Some of us don't even drink faucet water, right? You gotta have it out the bottle. However, those necessities are things that we gotta stop taking it for granted because they're not always gonna be there. Why do you think we're trying to find other places to explore? Our resources won't be here forever. So once we start thinking on that level, we'll get to a different part. So, inspiring future leaders by sharing lessons learned. Hopefully, through the question and answer, some of the lessons that we talked about here today, I will inspire somebody, not even the folks and the students that are sitting in these rows. Inspiration comes from a lot of different places, a lot of shapes, forms, sizes, and anybody can be inspired. You may have a project that you're working on at home that's been sitting there for the last 3 weeks. I do it all the time. You wouldn't imagine that I'm a pretty good procrastinator. Because sometimes I feel like I work better under pressure. However, it's not always the right thing to do. But I put stuff off because we say it all the time. If you give somebody a deadline, they'll work toward the deadline. However, if you don't give them a deadline, they never get it done. Okay? So, making sure that we inspire somebody in some kind of way, shape, form, or fashion. Leadership demands commitment. These are some things that I just jotted up here that I wanted to make sure I touch on. It demands commitment. If you had a head coach, or if you had a teacher, or if you had an instructor, or if you had a minister, or if you had any kind of leader that was not committed to the overall goal, that just came in and said, okay, this is what we're going to do, this is what you should accomplish, have at it. How likely are you to succeed in that arena? Not saying that it can't be done. Some of us are self-teachers, self-learners. You can go out and teach yourself. However, leadership takes commitment. Commitment to the cause, commitment of learning oneself, and commitment to the people. The people are the project. Every time I get into a project management role, I understand that my people are the success. It's not me. I'm one of the ones that like to get down in the dirt and get my hands dirty as well. It's the difference between a manager and a leader. Sometimes you can be both. But I'm one of those ones that I have to make sure that the people understand the goal, they understand that their voices are heard, and they are a part of this team just as much as I am leading it. Because without them, I'm nothing. Nothing at all. We talked a little bit about the self-assessments. That is one of the biggest hurdles that I've had to deal with. Learning how I deal with people. Learning to listen. Having positive intent, assuming positive intent. When I say assuming positive intent, just think of this. If I told you, hey, I need to know everything you're doing, you need to let me know where you're going to speak, when you're doing it, you may think I'm trying to micromanage you. You may think, oh, he's just making sure he knows where I am. When on the other hand, I may be in a small conversation with somebody higher up that I'm saying, hey, XYZ is going to speak at XYZ. We need to put him on a higher scale and allow him to do this on another level, and this is that and the third. See how those two different mindsets can have way two different actions when it comes to how you react with that person the next time you saw him. Assuming positive intent can go a long way. And learning oneself. What better subject to master than yourself? Understanding why you think the way you think. We have unconscious biases that we don't understand, that we just automatically button clicks, and that's how we respond. However, going out into the broader world, you will understand that that does not always work. You have to be able to connect on different levels. You have to be able to go down to the ground level and go up to the top. When I was on the center management detail, one weekend I was on console doing payload operations. The next Monday, I was in the Oval Office. So how does that work? You have to take your time to learn yourself. Learn the positive things about yourself. There's a book out there called The Strengths Finder. It has a workbook. I don't know if you guys use it. Use the things that are put out there for you to learn about yourself and how you think. That will go a long way, because I'm telling you, when you're dealing with certain things, and this is not even just a professional environment, even things at home. I started to think, I have a 150-pound Rottweiler. That's a house dog, right? He's a baby. Just as spoiled as he can be. Every time my mom comes up there, they feed him all kind of stuff. However, I've never had a house dog before. Growing up in South Alabama, my dad did not play in-house dogs, right? Dogs stayed outside. But with Capone, that's his name, Capone, I have to understand why I get angry at him when he does certain things. Was that because he did it last time and he's supposed to know this time? He's a dog, right? One of those assessments made me go and do an exercise with my dog that says, I want you to do the same thing 5 times and react 5 different times and see how he reacts. I got 5 different reactions out of my dog. The 5 different times I reacted. So me knowing that and knowing how I react, this is how he's going to react, now I know how to get the reaction out of him that I want. Did you catch that? Understanding different ways to navigate and how different reactions will give you different outcomes will take you further than you think you know. Every time something comes up, you don't have to argue about it. As a leader, you have to learn how to be wrong. There's a saying that said, be willing to be wrong, but you can be wrong, but are you willing to find out? That's one thing, I hated being wrong. I hated being wrong. I did not like being wrong. I fought it tooth and nail, knowing good and T well I was wrong. But I want to have excuses. I want to do this. As a leader, the faster, the quicker that you realize that you're wrong, and now let's fix it, rather than keep going down the wrong rabbit hole, the better you'll be. I wrote down one of the things in here. It said, every moment, how did it say? Every moment waited is a moment wasted. Think about that. Every moment waited is a moment wasted. If I spill my water here on the floor, every moment I wait to clean it up is a moment wasted to get it done. Time waits for no man. But it just goes all the way back. We're going to revert all the way back to waiting to get something done and not doing the best that I can is not conducive to being a great leader. Okay? And that can go back to the smallest of things or to the largest of things. To close out, I definitely want to give time for Q&A. We've talked about a couple of things here today, and I enjoy this. This is what recharges me. Being able to share experiences, be a bridge builder, and for somebody to maybe one day say, a guy from NASA came and talked to us, and he inspired me to go and work for NASA. If that happens, my day is done. My job is complete. Maybe not NASA. Maybe anywhere. Any other companies that will grow this great community. Everyone needs leaders. Not just NASA, federal government. I may be looking at the next president of the United States. Or I may be looking at the next president of Superfoods. Most of y'all probably don't even remember what Superfoods is. We don't do leadership. No. Leadership takes a lot of roles. Okay? And sometimes, and this is what I leave you with before we start the Q&A. How much time we got, Brett? Am I? We good? All right. I told y'all my dad's a preacher now, so I can stand up here all day. So, but if you go back, sometimes, if you look at the story of when I was talking about the college advisor that chuckled when I told him what I wanted to do and how I would succeed in doing it. It's almost like when David was anointed by Samuel to be the next great king of Israel. Nobody saw that in him. Sometimes you can see things for yourself that others don't see. Even your parents, your friends and closest loved ones. Some things are meant for you, and that you have to do what's necessary to get there. Now, with the right support system, they're going to support you the way. But sometimes, if you go back to the point, there are thousands to say that it cannot be done. There are thousands to prophesy failure. They'll point out every little thing that's, no, you can't do it because it is. No, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. However, we did talk about those advisors, those leaders that tell you, hey, you can't fit a round peg in a square hole. It's just not possible. Okay? So taking those little lessons, little pieces here, little pieces there, being innovative, and knowing how to navigate yourself first, and then you can lead others, is the biggest thing that you can take away. Biggest thing. So, Q&A. First question, first hand. Anybody? Life lessons, NASA lessons, anything. Yes?
What has been your most, professionally, what's been the most challenging difficulty you had to overcome?
The question was, professionally, what is the biggest hurdle or challenge that I've had to overcome? To be totally honest, you ever heard of this thing called imposter syndrome? Sometimes it's intimidating to go around a lot of people that know a lot of things that you know nothing about. So I think the biggest hurdle that I had was trying to step outside of my norm and being uncomfortable. Being uncomfortable, putting yourself in situations to learn, I think has been my biggest hurdle. Like I said, I've been stuck in my ways a long time when I think about how I do things, how I succeed, or this is the path I've taken to do things, but it always changes. But I think the biggest hurdle that I've had to deal with in my challenges in my career has been making sure that I'm pushing myself to the limit. There's this thing called being too confident in your convenience. And when I say that, something that's very convenient to you, you get so confident in it that it starts to feel easy. Once it feels easy, you start to get bored. Once it's bored, you don't put your best foot forward. I remember after I'd been working OC for a while, one of my managers, if I get bored, I tend to wander. I'll check out. Ms. Barton tell you I did it all the time, right, Clay? So I started to get to the point where this was a routine. I knew how to work console off like the back of my hand. And I would wander off. I'd be at work. I'd get a call. I snap in though, answer the question. Go right back to wander. My branch chief called me and he said, "Nick, let me talk to you." I said, "Yes." He said, "I don't think you're performing up to your standard." He said, I know how you perform, and things haven't been going well." I said, "Okay, so what's the problem?" When you make things look easier than they really are, people around you take notice of that, and it comes off as arrogance. You're not a team player. Boy, I went back to my office red hot. I was hot. Because I hadn't done anything wrong. However, stepping outside that norm and taking a step back, assuming positive intent. He wasn't telling me that to say I was doing something wrong. He was trying to help me. I didn't storm out of the office, Dad, before you know it. I didn't storm out. I just walked out. I was hot. But stepping outside my norm and being flexible and malleable to the point to where I do what it takes to get the job done. However, I need to take the people around me into consideration. Was one down here? Question? Yes, sir.
I was just curious what it was like when the two Boeing astronauts got stuck on the ISS for your life.
It was very, I'll use the word, it was interesting to me. Because it kind of works like this, okay? Space Station has 8 docking ports to where 8 different vehicles can be docked at one time. However, those vehicles and those seats are planned very closely. Those launch schedules are planned. If he got a 2-seater car, he got a 2-seater car, right? They went up, they went somewhere. All 4 of them can't come back in the 2-seater car, right? The vehicle that they left on had some problems, and they decided not to come back. However, that had been decided a long time ago. We decided that, hey, it's unsafe for you to come back on this vehicle. They'll stay up. This was not either one of them's first trip. So they decided to go up and be a part of the increment team. It was funny to see how it was put out that they were stuck. I got a lot of phone calls. Hey, man, how y'all just gonna leave the people up there with no food and no dumb? I said, listen, it's fine. They're fine. They're working. They may be a little upset. Because I think it was Butch that called down. One Saturday I was working, he actually called me on the telephone that we have on console. They usually call us over the loops, but sometime on Saturday when you're not doing anything, they'll call you on the telephone just to talk. And he says, "Hey." I said, "Hello? Our console. Who's this?" "Hey, it's Butch." Oh. How you doing, sir?" So we talked, and his son's birthday was the day before, that he would have been home. So those are the biggest things that on what made my life kind of the hardest. Because these astronauts, I call them our modern day heroes. Just even with this building right here in this room, if I gave you everything that you needed, food, water, a little entertainment, some way to work out, could you stay in this building for 6 months? My dad said, sure. It would be tough. The reason I said it would be really tough to not go outside, to not to get the fresh air, to not even, if you do an EVA, that may be twice in your increment. And that's only certain astronauts that get to go outside the space station. So, and the space station isn't where you can move around. It's real tight. So I think the biggest thing for me was to being empathetic to the crew members. I knew they were fine. We worked every day. I got some buddies that are flat earthers, and they call me all the time, and they give me the blues. And I just tell them, man, just come to Huntsville, I'll give you a tour, and we can see. However, just being empathetic to the crew, you could tell by the time they got done, they were pretty frustrated. They were ready to come home. But we made it happen, and I'm glad they were able to get back. But it was hectic because we had to deal with a lot of things, reorging seats to come back, and making sure we had a vehicle for them to come back was kind of stressful. Yes?
You mentioned commercial customers. Can
Mhm.
you give us an example of what that's like and what it costs the company to be a part of a space shuttle mission?
Ooh, costs. I'm just gonna say a lot. Commercial companies, SpaceX, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, a lot of your smaller engineering companies, they are starting to fly payloads. But when we're talking about commercial entities, now people are starting to fly their own rockets. When we did get rid of the shuttles, or we retired the shuttles, we started to use Northrop Grumman's rocket to take up supplies. We used SpaceX. We used now SpaceX to fly commercially. So up until now, with the SLS rocket, we've been contracting out that work to commercial customers. You got a lot of commercial companies out in the Houston area, out in the California area that are popping up, and it's almost like they're the little guy. They come together and they get these contracts, right? Because what they do is they provide a good to the government, and they're able to win those contracts. But if I would have to say a cost or what it looks like for a commercial company to get involved, really take the blueprint of your SpaceX's, your Axioms, your Northrops, your Boeings, and notice I said Boeing. Boeing don't just fly rockets. They do a lot of other things. So you got to know that they are not reinventing the wheel, so to say. So I would think a lot of resources, a lot of expertise, because a lot of the commercial companies are coming and hiring the folks from NASA to actually help them run their space program. So I think in the next 10 to 15 years, you'll see more commercial companies in the balance of how they're working, and you'll probably see more than one space station. That's just my assumption.
You also mentioned the speed that the space station travels.
Mhm.
The vehicle launch from here, does it have to get in orbit, then get up to speed?
That's correct. If you saw a rocket launch, it doesn't go from the ground straight up. We all know orbital mechanics. We all know trajectory science. It goes up and it goes to the right every single time. That's because with the shuttle, now all the vehicles aren't the same. With the shuttle, we had to go up, we had to go around, now we had to catch the space station in order to dock. The Soyuz vehicle is a little different, SpaceX vehicle is a little different. I think with the shuttle, it took us about a day and a half to get into the right orbit to catch the space station. I think with SpaceX and the Soyuz vehicles, they can do it in almost half a day. But it's all orbital mechanics. The technology that was used for the space shuttles is a lot different than what's been used in the newer vehicles. So I think once the technology gets there, tech guys down here, we'll find out ways to get there faster. Question?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Why was the space shuttle retired?
Why was the space shuttle retired? Good question. Great question. Imagine driving a 1955 Chevy Silverado and you put it through all kinds of turmoil. You wrecked it a couple times, you fixed it. You used old parts, you tried to fix it. After a while, you got to buy a new car, right? So, if you can think of the shuttles, we were reusing vehicles that were going in and out of the atmosphere. Now, if you think about how hot that is, some of the vehicles that we design, they burn up coming back into the atmosphere. That's how we trash it, right? So imagine, I think it was 6 vehicles that we're reusing, refurbishing. Every time they come back, we're putting the old parts back on it. Those of you who know motors and engines, you can't always put the same part back on it. Somebody's got to refurbish it. Somebody's got to reproduce it. So after a while, it just costs too much money for the government to keep refurbishing these vehicles. And it was more efficient and more cost efficient for us to contract that work out for other people that were making vehicles that could do the same thing. So it's almost like if you got a car, why Uber, right? Do we have Uber in Brewton? No? Hey, maybe I should start Uber. But you know, if you got a car, why Uber? Convenience, right? I can have a car full of gas sitting in my driveway, but I'll call it Uber. Some may say lazy, some may say convenience. But what was that point I said earlier? Don't get too confident in your convenience, right? So that's why it was more cost efficient. Yes, ma'am.
This may seem like a stupid question, but
no questions are stupid.
But you know how countries on Earth aren't allowed to claim Antarctica?
Mm-hmm.
How would that, when we start space traveling and finding different planets that we could potentially live on, how would that work with countries on Earth?
Great question. And you know what? That's a very smart question, because people in the Oval Office, on the Hill, they have these conversations all the time. Why do you think we made Space Force? To rule space, right? We got an Air Force. We have an Army that rules the ground. We got a Navy that runs and governs the water, right? So now we got to make a Space Force. Just think about Space Station. One thing I love about Space Station, it is the only laboratory in the world that political values go out the window. We have Russian astronauts, we have American astronauts, we have Europeans, Japanese. The mission must go on. I don't care what's going on down here. We got to take care of those astronauts. Now, the Russian segment in the space station, they have, and it's so funny. Just take this building, right? This is the U.S. lab. Everything in the U.S. lab is covered by the United States government, laws, rules, and regulations. You go down the hall to the administration office, that's the Russian segment. You have to have permission to go to the Russian segment. Everything in the Russian segment is ran by Russian laws, rules, and regulations. That's how it is. But you think those astronauts are worried about all that while they are 250 feet north of the Earth and orbiting at 17,500 miles per hour? No. They're trying to get the job done and come back home. And while I sit there and I work, that's what I have to remember. The mission is to go. Throw political values out the window, throw race relations out the window, throw all of that out the window. I got a mission to execute, and that's what's got to get done. So no, I don't know how to work. I know when the space race was first on, it was really the first that got there. But we don't own the moon, right? The Japanese don't own the moon. So it'll be interesting to see. That's a great question. Matter of fact, now I got to go and do my own research so I can find out myself. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have a teacher out in middle school. So if you had any advice, we drive them to do respect, do your chores, anything you do, you don't have to any time, but basic. But that they're not building an agenda until a couple years. What would you give yourself the best advice in even 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade? What would be the best advice you'd give yourself back then that you could change and they grasp that?
You know what? I think I would have started to key in on my strengths. We don't do that a lot. And I don't think, and this is not a bad about any of the school systems, I don't think we do a good enough job at pointing students in their strength area. We are so quick to look at their problem areas and focus on trying to get those level with their strengths, but that's not realistic. So if I had to say anything, I was always good at math. I didn't like it all the time, but I was always good at it, and now look at it, that was my degree, and that's what got me my job. But I think I would start to put a little more depth and thought into what I really like doing, what makes me happy. But if I had to, go back to the question, say a 7th grader, the respectfulness is going to be there. You will always have to answer to a chain of command, whether it's your parents, whether it's your teachers, whether it's the principal, whether it's the Board of Education. The Board of Education goes to the state goes to the national level. It all trickles down. So at this point, we talked about assuming positive intent. Don't go into it thinking that they're just getting on to you to be getting on to you. Now, sometimes teachers can have a bad day. I get it. However, they're telling you things to help you. They're telling you to start putting things into a priority list to help you. I'm gonna tell you one thing that I didn't learn that I really wish I would have in middle school, and that was how to actually study. Now, I thought it was studying. My dad would come there. My dad would come in there, and I would be sleeping in the bed with my books. I did more memorizing in middle school than anything. I memorized what was going on the test, put it on the test, I passed, good, boom. Next week, I didn't know nothing, we just had a test on. When I got to college, every class precedes the next class. So if you don't get it in this class, you're in trouble. Now, if we're talking about 6th, 7th grade, what you taking, pre-algebra? Algebra 1, maybe? Or is that predated?
I'm English, see, I'm like the bottom.
Oh, see, so with English, yes. I'm the wrong person to ask about English. I work with numbers, I'm a math guy. But learning how to study effectively. How do you learn? And the teacher should be able to help you with that. Every student has a different way of learning. So that's a great question. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I will say, as Nick's middle school English and Brett Chancery's English middle school teacher, their attitude was the thing. They always had that direction. It didn't matter that their career was in mode. They always were respectful, and they always knew that they could come back at that point and say, whether that was, they could come back and say, I could always say, these are fine gentlemen, and I'm very proud of them.
Thank you. I did not know you sitting there.
I graduated to college now.
Question.
What mission are you most proud of being a part of?
What mission am I most proud of being a part of? To be totally honest, when I was a payload planning manager, everything that we do at Marshall is science related. When I say science related, the space station right now is flying to conduct science. That's anything from cell growth to plant growth to anything you can think about. My lead increment as a PPM, we broke the record in payload hours in a week. I think we did like 260 something payload hours in that week. And it's still the record to well, technically. They say they broke a record with the EVA just because they did some payload stuff, but that's not true. I was very proud of that. And why? Because my team spent weeks planning that out. And they told us that we would never do it. Going back to that poem. Somebody said we couldn't. What's the term poem up here? But yeah, I was really proud of that moment. However, I think every successful mission when we bring our crew members down and we have any kind of science that we're able to execute is a successful mission. I'm proud of each and every one of them. But if I had to pick one, that was my lead PPM increment. Yes, sir.
I'm the gifted specialist for the district. I've got a lot of my awesome students here today.
Okay.
We're actually going to the U.S. Space and Rocket Center next week.
Oh.
But I know a lot of my kids.
In hospital?
Yes, sir.
What day?
May 1st for the 7th grade.
I'll talk to you after.
Awesome. I know a lot of them are thinking about possibly a career in aeronautics. What type of career pathway would you recommend, or give advice into what they should do?
Engineering is always a plus. Engineering is a term that's used very loosely, though. Because I remember some of the students that I was in college with, they majored in like mechanical engineering technology, or electrical engineering technology, EE Tech or ME Tech. A lot of your bigger companies and engineering firms will not hire those degrees. And I almost felt bad because they were taking a lot of the same classes I was, but that technical part of it kind of took that out. So I would say when you're choosing a degree path, make sure that it's one of those ones where they use the terms that a lot of the companies and businesses are looking for. Because I'd hate to have to spend 4 years, 5 years, and then you're not able to do what you want to do because of a technicality. But software engineering is very big right now. Computer science, everything is moving toward technology now. Everything. The last project I had was the Mission Operation Autonomous Demonstration. And what we're trying to do is to automate a lot of the different commands that we have to send to station. We send commands as easy as to turn the lights on in a certain area or to power up a rack to do science. So it's kind of not good for us because we're trying to automate those tasks to not have people sitting in every seat 24 hours a day. What does that do? That takes away jobs. However, if you design the automated program that's going to send these designs, you got a job for life, right? So I would say engineering, software development, IT security, and aeronautics. However, every place doesn't have an aeronautical program, an aeronautics engineering program. Southern didn't have one. However, my mechanical degree it allowed me to get into that realm. And I will say this, I'm a mechanical engineer by trade. That was what my degree was in, but I haven't done a lick of mechanical engineering since I left Southern University. Now, you say, well, that doesn't sound good. Well, yes, it does. Because I told them I didn't want to be in a lab every day doing calculations. I didn't want to be designing, rocket parts. I'm more of the management side. I'm more of the people side. I'm more of the meticulous scheduling side. However, that engineering degree allowed me to step my foot into that realm. Because they know I know how to problem solve. I know how to think. So those are some of the things that I would say. If aeronautics is your thing, you have a lot more programs now that are popping up at universities and colleges that really focus on aeronautics. And I think with the future of space flight and commercial industry, aeronautics is not a bad thing to go into. Because you can always come and do low Earth orbit, or you can do anything Boeing related. Talk to me next week. Maybe we can see if we can get you a tour set up. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Were you involved in helping the shuttle, Space Shuttle Challenger? Were you involved in that mission at all?
The Challenger mission? No, I wasn't. I wasn't. Involved in a lot of ones, but not that one. Had one behind you too.
I believe it was many years ago that there was the idea for a nuclear pulse engine.
Mm-hmm.
Would that have been possible to send that as an unmanned mission to another solar system, such as Proxima Centauri?
Possibly. There have to be a lot of thought put into that, because you're talking about the power that you're having to leave Earth. We call a successful mission 6 inches off of the launch pad. That's what we consider a success. Now, you think from going from that into Mr. Musk being able to re-land his rocket back on the platform, we've come a long way. So I think that would be very possible now. And I think you should be the one to put it in the wind. You think that's impossible?
Possibly.
I think it's very possible. So if that's something that you're interested in, then start putting the work in now. And next thing you know, I'll be reading about you and doing presentations with you. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
What are some rockets that have exploded?
We had two.
That you've had. Okay.
We had two to know, and that's a good question. It's two of the ones that, our shuttle engines that we actually had to do a lot of work to get the teams back ready to fly. Some of you may remember those two incidents. We still remember those crew members that we lost. However, there are a lot of other test flights and things that we've had and that we've lost that you would never hear about because they're unmanned, right? So that brings me to the next point of why doesn't NASA do a lot of test flights or blowing things up, as you said? If you have another company that's willing to take that risk, let them do it. Because they have their own funds, they have their own resources, and they're able to do things outside of the realm of our regulations that we have. So we let them test, we let them do whatever they need to do, and we contract their work out. Yes?
What do you feel is the most positive impact you made to the globe and on the job?
The most positive impact I've made, I think standing right here. To be totally honest, standing right here. Because if anybody leaves here today and thinks that I can do it too, and Nick Benjamin can do it, I can do it. This is the biggest impact. That's why these type of events recharge me. Being totally honest, I am full as a tick right now. Being in front of people that are from my community, where I grew up, I got in trouble right down the street. I mean, just like y'all run the streets and get in trouble, I did the same thing, man. It's no different. My dad scolded me, and like I said, Brewton is home. I grew up here. I went to Upper Bound on this campus. I did talent shows in the auditorium next door. I graduated right across the creek. But my career has allowed me to see the world. It's allowed me to see a broader world. Nothing against Brewton, Alabama. Never. But it allowed me to see other things and the other ways of life that people act. How do they react? I remember the first time I went to Germany, and I go sit down for my dinner, and I asked the guy for a Coke. He looked funny. I said, I want a Coke. You know, he looked at me and I said, well, just bring me some water. He brought me the water. It was a big cup. It was fizzy water, seltzer water, right? I said, no, water, regular water. He said, oh, no gas? Yes, no gas, or whatever you want to call it, just bring some water. He brings the water, no ice. So I'm like, I want some ice water. What am I going to do with a cup of water? I asked for ice, he laughs. They don't do ice. They don't do ice. And the reason he laughed when I asked for a Coke, because every meal they drink beer, right? So it allowed me to see everybody doesn't come and have ice water and, you know, water, sweet tea. That was funny because I went to Texas. I didn't even know they don't even serve sweet tea in Texas in some parts. They just give you tea. They won't even serve you sweet tea. But going back to the question, this is the biggest impact. If, like I said, my foundation is here, my teachers are here, my family is here, my friends are here. And it's hard not to, I've gotten better at not coming to tears when I talk about that since I've done this a couple times. But the impact that had on me is bigger than they would ever know. And I just hope to do the same to somebody. For somebody to leave this auditorium and say, hey, whatever I do next, I'm going for it. Because Me being an athlete, when it was 12:30 and I walked through that door, I said, it's game time. It's time to go. So these guys go and they remember me one day. It's the biggest impact that I could ever have on anybody. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Which international teams do you find most enjoyable and most difficult to work with?
Oh, man, that's a great question. And it's actually a funny one. The Europeans are very easy to work with. Why? I'm not a morning person, folks. I don't like getting up in the morning early. I'm a night owl, right? That's just me. When I was in Germany, and we would start working at about 9 o'clock, 9:30. And we were hard at work. We go to lunch at 12. Lunch was 2 hours. Because all of the places over there, it wasn't like a McDonald's. It was all vintage hand-cooked food. So it took a little while. Once we came back from lunch, we had our coffee break. But now, we're going to work till 6, 7 o'clock at night because we got to get the job done, right? That didn't bother me because, I was in somewhere else. I didn't have anything to do in the evening, so I could work 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night. The language barrier with the Japanese is kind of difficult. Why? Because they don't really understand everything that we're saying, so we have to slow it down. And even their English is broken, so you could imagine listening on a loop with 30 different conversations going on in your head, and then trying to figure out how we're going to, what are they talking about? What can I take from that conversation? But I think everybody is pretty equally yoked when it comes to coordination. The biggest thing is sort of the time difference. Because with the Japanese, when we have meetings in their morning, I think it's almost, 14-hour difference? So we all operate on GMT time on Space Station, so it's the same thing. But, to accommodate with everybody, we try to swap times every now and then. But I think the time difference makes it harder to work with Japanese and kind of the language barriers. But I'd say our folks at East are my guys. I like their work schedule. I just put it like that. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
What significant missions have you been involved in?
All of them. No. I think the most significant one was when we brought the astronauts back. It was highly in the media about the astronauts that were stuck, and I was actually on console to see them land and touch down. I had a part in bringing them back, so I think that was very significant here as of the closer future. The present. But like I said, all of them, I love working Space Station. I love working ops. I want to get future-wise more to the program project management side of it, so ops may not be a part of the near future, but we shall see. I'm good. I'll answer questions all day. Well, thank you guys, and I think I'm going to hand it over now. I think there are a few scholarship recipients that we have out here that they'll be giving out, but I want to say thank you again. This is the, like I said, experience of a lifetime for me. No matter where I go, I'll always remember talking to the students and the people at the Historical Society at Coastal Alabama Community College. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Nick. We appreciate that. Nick Benjamin. I think we know a lot more about NASA now. And I think you have encouraged some to go ahead and put your application in at NASA. I think I'll do that when I grow up. Well, this event was put on by the student Coastal Alabama Historical Society. Brent Chancery and I got together 2 years ago and said, we need a student historical society. And that's been one of the greatest things that's ever happened because it's gotten students really interested in history. We go on trips, we show them old forts, and all the great history from around here, they get to learn. So right now, we have 16 students that are part of the Historical Society. And I want to invite all these high school students to sign up for the Historical Society when you come to college here. Now, we have some students that we want to recognize tonight and ask to come up here on the stage. This will be 4 of our students that we're going to give scholarships to. So, Madeline Paget. And Madeline, just stand right up here and stay. Samuel Harris. David George. Ian Carpenter. Now, these are all $400 scholarships, each one of them. So it pays to love history. So I want to thank everybody for coming out today. I want to thank Dr. Lonnie Burnett, our Vice President, for being here. Dr. Brent Chancery for being here for us. Dennis Jugway for being here. And I'd like to thank Dr. Milner for making all this possible for us. And the maintenance crew that was here today that helped us put all this together, Rob and Ryan and Will, all of them worked hard in here to get this together. So thank everybody for coming out, and next year we'll see you right here at the same time. Good night, and be careful going.